In the 5th year of marriage to the honest blacksmith, he became infatuated with the pretty widow next door who sold rouge. When she moved goods, he rushed to help. When she sighed about her hard life, he patted his chest. From now on, you have me. A neighborhood auntie couldn't stand it anymore. Your wife gets up before dawn and works till dark making tofu, her back's bent from exhaustion, and you are here helping an outsider. He sneered, rubbing the corner of his clothes. She reeks of beans. Hugging her makes my hands sticky. I can't even bring myself to kiss her when we're intimate. If I hadn't pitied her back then, who would marry a tofu seller? That night, I split the silver saved over 5 years in two. Half I stuffed under his pillow, half I tucked into my own chest. I picked up the brine recipe and copper ladle and left without looking back. Half a year later, I opened a new tofu shop in Wuxia town. My ex-husband came chasing excitedly, standing at the door grinning. Our family shop is so grand. My handsome mute husband stepped in front of me, speaking with difficulty but clearly. Where did this filthy thing come from? This is the moment we were all waiting for. The ex sees her success and suddenly wants to play happy family again. The absolute delusion. But our silent king didn't just block the door. He verbally body slammed him, calling the ex a filthy thing, brutal. It's so satisfying watching a man who usually can't speak find his voice just to protect his wife. That is true husband material right there. Stay away from my wife. The sky was still dim when I got up. The soybeans in the back room's vat had soaked overnight, each one plump and shiny. A pinch between my fingers split them in two, releasing a crisp, fresh fragrance. This smell was once called Poor Sour Stench by Joe Shui, but in Lucy, the neighbors say, once you smell this bean fragrance, you know tofu lady is about to set up her stall. This is my 2nd month in Wuxia town. I rent a small riverside cottage, selling in the front, living in the back. Every day I get up at the 3rd watch to grind beans, strain the pulp, boil the milk, add the coagulant. I've sweated quite a bit, but seeing the snow white, quivering tofu pudding and the firm, soft tofu blocks puts my heart at ease. The folk here are honest and kind, neighbors get along well. Even business is easier than in Qinghai town. The dock workers, after toiling all night, swear by my bowl of hot, tender tofu pudding. The purchasing guy from the restaurant in the east side of town comes every few days to haul away a whole board of tofu. Days soak in steam and the fragrance of beans, much more relaxed than back in Qinghai. The only annoyance is Granny Wang next door, always coming over to play matchmaker. The day before yesterday she brought a burly porter saying, he can carry 200 jin, more than enough to provide for you. Yesterday she brought a poor scholar, sleeves worn through, but not mended, still bobbing his head pretentiously. When I top the imperial exams one day, I shall never fail you. Every time I listen with a smile, but never nod in agreement. If men were reliable, pigs would fly, but the one Granny Wang brought today made my copper ladle pause for a moment. Fair and clean, broad shoulders and narrow waist, standing in the morning light like a tall, straight bamboo. Long, slender fingers, calluses on his palms. He has done work, but not rough. Seeing me look up, he hurried to speak. But only a few muffled sounds came out, sweat beading at his temples from the effort. Oh my, what is the rush? Granny Wang patted his shoulder. This young man is Chen Yan, a carpenter, honest fellow, warm-hearted, fixing millstones, weaving bamboo baskets, making carts. He is good at everything. It is just his voice is ruined, but he is willing to marry in. Living together ain't about shouting, right, Daoniang? At this moment, I should have just smiled and turned away to pretend I was busy. But somehow, my gaze lingered on his face for a moment. Then, pathetically, I swallowed. Can't really blame me for that. Joe Shui hurt his back from blacksmithing, and he complained I smelled like beans. Counting the days, it has been almost half a year since I've touched a man. Now seeing one with decent features, it'd be impossible not to crave. Chen Yan was quite good-looking, thick dark eyebrows, bright eyes, and a face as fair as freshly made soft tofu. He was tall with broad shoulders, and under his thin hemp clothes, you could vaguely make out some muscle. Not noisy, looked hard-working too, seemed like someone who could settle down and live a steady life. The moment this thought popped up, I startled myself. Back when I married Joe Shui, wasn't it also because he was honest and cold make a living? And how did that turn out? Still ended up going our separate ways without even a decent word between us. Let's just forget it, Granny. I took a deep breath and pushed down those thoughts I shouldn't have. I am doing just fine on my own. Joe Shui's family had been blacksmiths for 3 generations. His father died young, and on his deathbed, His greatest concern was for him to preserve the family's blacksmith business, and he really did live up to expectations. He was honest and hardworking, and whenever the neighbors mentioned him, they all praised him for being reliable. Back then, I had a tofu stall at the street corner. Whenever he came to buy tofu pudding, he'd always give me an extra coin, saying, "You are a girl all alone, with no one to rely on. It is not easy." Later, as we got familiar, he'd help me push my cart and watch my stall. One thing led to another, and he said he wanted to marry me. That day he stood in front of my stall, grinning foolishly, his face flushed red. "Doniang, you are too lonely by yourself. I want to take care of you. From now on, I'll forge iron, you'll sell tofu, and we'll build a good life together." My parents died early, and I'd lived alone for over a decade. I wasn't really expecting anyone to take care of me, but that loneliness, year after year, I was truly sick of it. I married Zhou Shui. Qinghe town was small, no one cared, and marriages didn't need to be registered with the authorities. 2 red candles, an old bridal veil, plus a bowl of sweet tofu pudding for the wedding toast. And I became a wife of the Zhou family. In the first half year after we married, Zhou Shui truly doted on me. Every day before dawn, he'd get up and grind soybeans for me. After the soy milk was boiled, and I finished adding the coagulant, only then would he go to the smithy to work. At night, he'd hold me tight, always smiling and saying, "Doniang's skin is smoother than tofu, and that faint fragrance on her body has stolen my soul." Everything changed after he hurt his back while forging iron. The doctor shook his head and sighed, saying his back could never handle heavy work again. He lay in bed, utterly defeated, holding my hand and said, "Doniang, once I recover, I'll definitely make it up to you tenfold." I gently patted the back of his hand. "We're family, no need to talk about making up for anything." Just like that, the burden of supporting the family fell entirely on my shoulders. I woke up earlier and slept later. Grinding beans, adding brine, setting up the stall, making deliveries. I didn't miss a single thing. When I got home, the stove was cold, the pot was empty, so I'd muster up my energy again, start the fire, cook, do laundry, then help wash him. I'd thought about having a child before, but given the circumstances now, I never brought it up again. Zhou Shui felt guilty at first. As time went on, he got used to being provided for by me, either lying around in a daze or sitting at the doorway basking in the sun. Days passed one by one, watching his body get more and more relaxed, able to sit and walk. My heart felt comforted too. As long as he was here, this was still a home. Thankfully, I made it through until Widow Liu moved in next door. Widow Liu sold rouge, fair-skinned and pretty, spoke in a soft, gentle voice. When she was moving her goods, she accidentally twisted her ankle, and Zhou Shui immediately rushed over to help. At first, it was once or twice, then it became a regular thing. Every day I dragged my aching body home, and often saw him sitting on a small stool in front of her shop, listening to her wipe her tears. "My fate, why is it so bitter?" He patted his chest, his voice booming in a way I hadn't heard in a long time. "What is there to fear? From now on, I'll be here with you." Gradually, the neighbors started gossiping. Aunt Li quietly pulled me aside and lowered her voice. "Doniang, you need to be careful. That widow is no pushover." I just smiled. Don't you know what kind of person Shou Ye is? He is just warm-hearted but clumsy with words. Speaks without thinking. I'll talk to him later. I truly thought so. Zhou Shui, this man, looks rough and careless, but his heart is genuine. It was precisely this honest nature that made me feel I could rely on him. Until that day, when I was delivering tofu to the restaurant and passed by the rouge shop. Aunt Li was tugging at his sleeve, questioning him. "Your wife gets up early and works late grinding tofu. Her back is bent from exhaustion, yet you have the leisure to come help an outsider every few days. And what is the deal with this hairpin? Don't you know what giving a hairpin means?" I stopped in my tracks and peered in through the half-open door curtain. In Zhou Shui's dark, rough palm, he was holding a slender silver hairpin, gleaming softly in the dim light. I was stunned. I'd been with him for 5 years, and he'd never given me a single piece of jewelry. Back then, when I said I wanted to wear earrings, he just laughed. "You are good-looking. You don't need those tacky things. Besides, what if it falls into the soy milk? That would ruin both." Now, he is willing to buy them for someone else. My chest suddenly tightened, and I was about to step in to demand an explanation. But then I heard Aunt Li say urgently, "Doniang is such a good wife. Others would be eager to get close to her. Don't take her for granted." Zhou Shui rubbed the corner of his clothes and sneered. "She reeks of beans, and just hugging her makes my hands sticky. Get close." I can't even bring myself to kiss her. If I hadn't pitied her back then, who would marry a tofu seller? Those words were like a bucket of ice water, ruthlessly poured over my head. So that is why he refused to share the bed with me these past few months. It wasn't back pain, but because he found my smell disgusting. But I am the cleanest person there is. No matter how late I closed up shop, I would always heat water and wash myself thoroughly twice with bath beans. He, on the other hand, always smelled of sweat and called it manly vigor, refusing to wash properly. It seems it wasn't my smell that changed. It was his heart that changed. I grew up all alone since childhood. Parting was never a big deal to me, so I didn't cry, and I didn't make a scene. That very night, I packed my bundle. The copper coins I'd saved over 5 years. I counted again and again, then split them in two. We never registered at the government office. So we're not a proper married couple, and there is no divorce to speak of. I pushed half the money in front of him. When I entered this household, you didn't give a bride price, and I didn't bring a dowry. Now that we're separating, it is half and half. No one owes anyone. Joe Shui huddled on the bed, neck stiff, not making a sound. Only when he saw me actually pick up my bundle and turn to leave did he panic a little, just because of that one remark, "You are leaving." I turned to look at him. "Joe Shui, I am not a fool. I saw how you looked when you loved me back then. Now that you don't anymore, I can tell. You are a woman with no one to rely on. Where can you even go? Once you leave this home, how will you survive?" I didn't respond and walked straight out. He shouted urgently from behind, "If you leave, don't even think about coming back. If you end up begging on the streets someday, don't come crying with regret." "Ladies, this is the energy we need in 2026. He told her she smelled like beans and refused to touch her, then had the audacity to think she'd starve without him. Please, she didn't scream or cry. She just took half the cash and left. As she should. Begging is better than being with. That line hit harder than his sledgehammer. She chose dignity over a toxic marriage, and we are living for it. I didn't look back. Begging is still better than being despised here with you. 5 years of marriage, gone just like that. My heart couldn't help but feel a bit empty. So when Granny Wang brought up a marriage match, my first reaction was to refuse. "Let's just forget it, Granny." When he heard me say, "Forget it," the light in Chen Yansheng's eyes dimmed instantly. He lowered his head and said nothing more. Granny Wang smiled and tugged at his sleeve. "Then, let's head back for now. We can talk another day." Chen Yansheng glanced at me, then followed her away. His blue cloth robe disappeared into the morning light, thin and lonely. I thought the matter would just pass like that, but unexpectedly, from then on, whenever I set up my stall, I could always see him not far away. At first, he just stood at a distance. Later, he came closer, quietly helping me pick up scattered tools and steadying the canopy blown crooked by the wind. After finishing, he'd retreat to the side, like a pitiful little puppy. One early morning, I was washing beanbags by the river. The water was bone-chillingly cold, and my hands turned red the moment I dipped them in. Suddenly, everything went dark before my eyes. A pair of hands with distinct knuckles reached over, palm open with a dry cloth. I looked up, meeting Chen Yansheng's clear, bright eyes. He didn't say anything, gently placed the cloth on the stone steps, took the beanbag from my hands, and squatted down to wash it. Water splashed and soaked half his sleeve, but he didn't care. He washed it very carefully, even wiping clean the bean residue in the corners. I clutched that cloth still warm from his hands, gazing at his lowered profile, and forgot to move for a moment. After that, he came even more often. The axle of my cart had been broken for days, creaking and squeaking annoyingly. Without a word, he squatted behind the stall and tinkered with it for a long time. He replaced the axle, oiled it, and adjusted the balance. When I pushed it again, the wheels turned fast and smooth, steady as if walking on clouds. He packed up his tools, gave me a shy nod, and turned to leave again. I suddenly called out to him, "I made too much tofu soup. Do you want a bowl?" Chen Yansheng's eyes lit up, and he immediately curled his lips into a smile. Nodding, he sat stiffly at the table. Even holding the spoon perfectly straight, he kept sneaking glances at me from the corner of his eye, but didn't dare to look up. I found it amusing and asked him, "What is wrong with your voice? You really can't speak anymore." He nodded. His lips moved, wanting to explain something, but only a few hoarse breaths came out. My heart tightened, feeling a bit regretful. Nobody likes having their sore spots poked at. Why did I bring this up? But Chen Yansheng didn't seem angry. He pulled out a small piece of charcoal and some paper from his chest and began writing with his head lowered. I don't know many characters, but I understood. A few years ago, he was building boats for someone at a carpentry workshop. Because he refused to cut corners with them, he broke the workshop's rules. Not only did he lose his job, but that black-hearted shopkeeper also forced medicine down his throat, poisoning his voice. I felt uneasy inside, and comforted him. A good person like you. Heaven won't mistreat you forever. As I spoke, I moved closer, wanting to pat his shoulder. Unexpectedly, he flinched back sharply, as if burned by fire. My hand froze in midair, my heart skipping a beat. Does he also think I smell bad? Awkwardly withdrawing my hand, I said quietly, "Sorry, I've been marinated by the beans so long the smell soaked into me. Must be bothering you." For some reason, Chen Yan became anxious. His face flushed bright red as he shook his head desperately. His mouth opened and closed, as if using all his strength, finally squeezing out one word, "fragrant." I froze. He was so anxious that veins bulged at his temples, pointing at me, clumsily repeating, "fragrant." Looking at his flushed face and panicked eyes, that bit of grievance in my heart suddenly dissipated, and I burst out laughing. "So you can talk. Your voice isn't bad either." He lowered his head in embarrassment, even the tips of his ears turning red. That look of his made my heart go soft. As if possessed, I blurted out, "Granny Wang said that day, you were willing to marry into my family. Does that still count?" He suddenly raised his head, eyes wide and round. In his eyes, it was as if two small flames had suddenly ignited, startlingly bright. He nodded vigorously, once, then again, afraid I wouldn't believe him. That bit of testing in my heart suddenly settled down, giving rise to a warm sense of reassurance. "Then how about this?" I looked at him, the corners of my mouth curling up uncontrollably. "If one day you can clearly call out my name, I'll say yes to you." He was stunned for a moment, then nodded excitedly. For the next half-month, Chen Yan didn't come. At first I thought he was busy, or maybe shy, but 3 days, 5 days, 10 days passed, and I never saw him again. That bit of warmth that had just begun to sprout in my heart gradually cooled down. Perhaps I was asking too much of him. We were just strangers who met by chance. It is fine if he doesn't come. I made up my mind to forget about it, but unexpectedly, the next morning, he was standing in front of my stall. He was still wearing that half-worn blue cloth shirt, but it was washed clean and pressed neatly. His hair was combed without a strand out of place, with a few wet strands still clinging to his forehead. In the morning light, his eyes were so bright they burned, gazing straight at me. Even the tips of his ears flushed pink, after taking a deep breath. His lips trembled slightly, as if using all his strength. Very slowly, yet very clearly, he uttered 2 words, "Du Niang." His voice was hoarse, yet every word was distinct, like 2 warm pebbles, landing precisely in the softest place of my heart. My heart pounded fiercely, and I reached out to grab his sleeve. "Come on, let's go buy red candles." But he gently shook his head and silently opened the bundle he had brought. Inside were neatly arranged a pair of red candles, several cut-out double happiness characters, a pink beaded hairpin, a pouch of silver pieces, and 2 brand-new red outfits. I was stunned for a moment, and couldn't help but ask with a smile, "Where did you get the money?" He took out a charcoal pencil and wrote on paper, "Saved up before," and "sold the house." Talk about raising the bar. The ex-husband wouldn't buy her a 50-cent hairpin in 5 years. But this man, he literally sold his house to buy her a proper engagement gift. He bet his entire future on her without hesitating. That is not just a green flag, that represents a whole forest of green flags. Unlike the ex who wanted a servant, this man went all in for a partner. My heart jolted. Sold it. He really didn't leave himself any way out at all. My eyes suddenly welled up with warmth. I picked up the pearl hairpin and held it against my hair bun, but my hands trembled so much I couldn't pin it steady. Chen Yan gently took it from me, his fingertips carefully smoothing my stray hairs before securing the pearl hairpin in place. A crisp, woody fragrance descended as he drew near, clean and reassuring. I held my breath, my face burning hot in an instant, and asked softly, Does it look good?" He stepped back half a pace, studied me carefully, and nodded firmly. Those smiling eyes of his were filled with fragments of morning light, and reflected within them was a tiny me, wearing the pearl hairpin, cheeks flushed pink. That evening, Chen Yan insisted on cooking. He made a few simple home-style dishes, and they turned out quite decent. Red candles flickered with light, and the double happiness characters on the windows bathed the room in warmth. The 2 of us sat on the edge of the bed, momentarily at a loss for words. Having been through this before, I didn't find it too awkward, but he sat there stiff as a wooden post, ramrod straight, flushed red from his face down to his neck. I felt like teasing him, so I leaned close to his ear, my breath lightly brushing against it. "Do you know what we're supposed to do tonight?" His long eyelashes trembled heavily. First he nodded, then shook his head in a panic. I couldn't help but laugh. Yet my heart melted into a pool of water. I leaned in and kissed the corner of his lips. Chen Yansheng's whole body shuddered, and almost instinctively, he kissed me back. His lips were hot. His hands were trembling, kissing wildly on my lips and neck. Clothes quickly became disheveled. He pressed down, his scorching palm against my lower back, yet his strength was somewhat lost. He tried several times, but couldn't manage it, anxious and sweating profusely. Unable to speak, he could only whimper with wet eyes, aggrieved. His rubbing made my whole body go soft, and I really couldn't bear it anymore. So I flipped over and kissed him. I taught him hand by hand, where to be gentle, where to be firm, when to pause. He learned earnestly, his fingertips pressing into the small of my back, so hot it made my heart tremble. Later, somehow, he suddenly seemed to get the hang of it. With one swift roll, he had me pinned beneath him, though his movements still carried a raw clumsiness. They were steady and firm. I sank into a haze of warm heat, unable to see anything clearly. I only heard his hoarse voice, mixed with scorching breath, brushing past my ear again and again. Du Niang, Dao Niang. Waking up late the next day was inevitable. The moment I opened my eyes, I heard the gurgling sound of the millstone from the back room. It must be Chen Yansheng grinding beans. For no reason, I thought of how Zhou Shouyi used to get up early to grind for me too. Later he hurt his back and stopped caring for me. Later still, his heart went elsewhere. Would Chen Yansheng someday also? I shook my head, annoyed at myself for overthinking. Thinking like this was too unfair to Chen Yansheng. Better to just take it one day at a time. If he changes later, we can always part ways then. This time, I won't be the one to leave. This is my place. If anyone should go, it is him. But as the days passed, not only did he not change, he became even more considerate. He ground the beans evenly, timed the coagulant perfectly, and the tofu came out so tender it glistened with moisture. He even added a waterproof oilcloth canopy to the cart and built a more breathable, bump-resistant lattice for the tofu box. The aunties and sisters who came to buy tofu all teased me. Doniang, you are so lucky. You found such a caring and capable husband. He'd just stand there beside me, the tips of his ears slightly red, smiling shyly. Occasionally he'd respond softly, his voice still hoarse, but earnest. I am the lucky one. He knew I couldn't read much, so he practiced speaking every day. From single words to short sentences, he'd recite them over and over facing the corner, practice by the river. After 2 months, he could already speak in halting but complete sentences. Only when he really couldn't explain clearly would he take out a charcoal pencil and slowly write it down on paper for me to see. As for his carpentry work, he didn't neglect that either. Whenever someone's stool leg was loose or window frame was crooked, he was happy to go fix it. When he got paid, he'd hand every single coin over to me. When I refused, he'd get anxious, furrowing his brow, insisting on stuffing it into the clay jar under my bed. I thought, he and Zhou Shouyi are ultimately different. Zhou Shouyi was a male chauvinist, always wanting to control my money. But Chen Yansheng never touched my money, and gave me everything he earned. When we came back from closing the stall at night, he was tired too, yet always remembered to heat up water, wring out a towel, and help me wipe down. One time I was half asleep, felt the space beside me empty, and asked groggily, Yansheng, aren't you sleeping? Chen Yansheng poked his head out from the back room, grinning. The beans haven't been soaked yet, need to grind them tomorrow morning. I was stunned for a moment, only then hazily realizing that I hadn't touched the beans in a long time. These trivial tasks had long been silently taken over by him. My heart softened. I got up from bed, walked over and pulled him. Sleep now. He hesitated, but the beans, forget about it. I kissed him, pulled over the blanket, and wrapped us both into the darkness, a night of deep spring. Early the next morning, he propped himself on his elbow, lying on his side at the edge of the bed, cheeks flushed, asking me, no beans today. How do we set up the stall? I squinted, lazily hooking my arms around his neck. What do you think? He froze for a moment, then his eyes suddenly curved, smiling a bit silly, yet a bit mischievous. Then, keep sleeping. Before his words faded, a warm kiss had already fallen. In late autumn, Aunt Lee from Qinghe Town came back to visit her hometown and stopped by to see me, bringing news of Zhou Shouyi. After you left, he was quite smug for a few days, going around telling everyone he dumped a burden, spending all day at the rouge shop, helping that widow Liu move things around. I heard he even put all the money he got from the split into the rouge shop, saying he wants to make a life together with her and do big business. Aunt Lee pursed her lips, her tone full of indignation. That widow was all sweet and gentle with him at first. But later, when she saw he'd spent most of his money and his back injury was bad, couldn't do any real work, her face changed. Now, she orders him around, never a kind look. Mark my words, once that bit of money's gone, they'll split. Chen Yan was quietly tidying up the dishes beside us, his back to us, but his movements slowed down, even the tips of his ears perked up. I held back my laughter and ladled a bowl of hot duhua for Aunt Leonti. Why don't you try my duhua instead? It is a new recipe. As for other people's business, it has got nothing to do with me anymore. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Chen Yansheng's lips curling up. Even his table-wiping motions became lighter. This fool really wears everything on his face. Chen Yansheng wasn't just capable, he also had a clever mind. With those hands of his that did woodwork, he crafted several new tools for making tofu for me. A straining rack with a fine mesh filter. Set it over the pot, and the soy milk filters fast and clean. Not a bit of dregs leaks through. A pressing board with adjustable pegs. When pressing tofu, you can control the thickness and pressure, and the tofu comes out perfectly square. There were also a few double-walled insulated soup buckets. When selling tofu pudding at the morning stall, it would still be piping hot when delivered to the docks. Using these tools saved effort and sped up the work, and business got better and better. The two of us talked it over and decided to expand the stall into a small workshop, moving to a bustling street market. We rented a storefront, hung up a sign, and called it Daoshangji. We didn't just sell tofu pudding and tofu anymore. We added tofu sheets, dried tofu, vegetarian chicken. Worried we couldn't handle it all, we hired 2 honest, hard-working young helpers. On the day Daoshangji opened, the shop was packed with people. Neighbors came to congratulate us, carrying eggs and holding red cloth, laughter filling the air. Only one person stood outside the crowd, dark-skinned and gaunt, with sunken eyes, looking utterly down and out. I looked closely and saw it was Zhou Shouye. He used to be built like a black ox, but now he was so thin his cheekbones jutted out, his clothes hanging loosely on his frame. It seemed what Aunt Lee said was true. He'd been bled dry by that widow and couldn't even afford to eat properly. He squeezed out a smile and came forward, but his eyes greedily scanned the shop. If I hadn't overheard Aunt Lee talking, I wouldn't have known our family opened a new shop. This location's pretty good, and the renovation's quite impressive. I knew it, my Duniang is the most capable. I almost laughed out loud. Zhou Shui, have you lost your mind? We went our separate ways half a year ago. What? Our family? His face darkened, and he sneered. You think you can just call it quits? I haven't agreed yet. You are my wife. What is yours is mine. As he spoke, he reached out and grabbed my arm. Chen Yancheng stepped in front of me, his expression calm, but his eyes cold as ice-tempered blades. Where did this filthy thing come from? Stay away from my wife. Zhou Shuye stumbled back several steps from the push. Feeling humiliated, he pointed at Chen Yansheng and mocked shrilly. Huh, no wonder you are so tough. Turns out you found yourself a wild man, and a stutterer at that. Daonyang, you just can't live without a man, huh? Even treating a cripple like a treasure. I looked at him coldly. Cripple, he uses his own skills to help me run this shop and give me a good life. And you, without a woman, you can't even get a hot meal, can you? Look at yourself now. Zhou Shui's sore spot was hit. His face turned liver-colored, and he shrieked. He gives you a good life. Don't be naive. Watch out, or you'll be swindled out of all your money someday too. Chen Yansheng was so angry, his hands were shaking. He grabbed the broom handle by the door, and, without a word, drove the man out of the shop. Then, ignoring the roomful of neighbors, he turned and pulled me into a tight embrace. Wife, I will never lie to you. Never, never, ever. The onlooking crowd was stunned for a moment, then burst into laughter. Granny Wang wiped the corner of her eye and laughed at him. Oh my, this silly boy. So flustered his words came out all jumbled. I buried my face in his chest, my eyes growing warm. But it wasn't from embarrassment. It was the relief of finally being caught and held steady. I gently hugged him back, looked up and smiled. I know. Another spring arrived. The name Dushengji grew more and more renowned in Lucy Town. The little Dusheng wooden stamp that Chen Yansheng carved, pressed onto the oil paper of outgoing goods, became a mark of quality. Even restaurants from other regions sent people to place long-term orders. Because of this, tofu makers from neighboring towns and even other counties came to learn the trade. By reputation, Granny Wang pulled me aside privately and lowered her voice. Daonyang, you can't just teach this craft to anyone. The secrets of those filtering racks and pressing boards are the foundation of your livelihood. How can you let others just see them? Chen Yansheng just smiled when he heard this and said nothing. But when someone actually came to ask, he gestured and explained the methods in full detail. When they listened in confusion, he found some charcoal sticks and drew diagrams on rough paper. He even picked up some scrap wood and nailed together a simple model on the spot. He taught them hand by hand how to fit the mortise and tenon joints and adjust the tightness. After the person left, I couldn't help but scold him. "You are way too honest." He shook his head mysteriously. "Making a living isn't easy for anyone. Besides, tools are dead things, but craftsmanship is alive. Our skills, they won't be able to learn them anytime soon." My eyes lit up. "You mean, we're not just selling tofu, we can also sell these tools?" He nodded with a smile and pulled out several neatly folded papers from his chest. They were covered with densely drawn diagrams, filtering racks, pressing boards, insulated barrels, what wood to use for each tool, how many inches thick, how long to make, what price to set. Everything was marked clearly, so he had been planning this for a long time. We discussed it all night, and the next day we took over the shop next door and opened a carpentry workshop. Besides tofu shop tools, he also developed handy tools for sauce workshops and pastry shops. Bosses from both local and other places rushed to buy them. For a while, the carpentry workshop's business was even more booming than my daoshengji. He pretended to be angry, standing at the door with my hands on my hips. Well, now your carpentry workshop is the boss, putting my tofu shop to shame." When Chen Yan heard this, he quickly dropped his plane and jogged over to coax me, rubbing my shoulders, handing me flower tea. "What is yours, and what is mine is also yours. Doshengji will always be the best." That aggrieved yet adorable look made me burst out laughing. Just as she was being affectionate with him, the doorway suddenly darkened. Several unfamiliar men blocked the front of the shop. The leader was a middle-aged man with a short beard, his eyes shrewd and carrying a ruthless edge. It was none other than that shopkeeper Liu who had poisoned Chen Yan Mute years ago. Chen the Mute. Shopkeeper Liu's voice was loud, but his words were harsh. "You learned some half-baked skills from somewhere, and now you dare come back to steal business from your peers. This shop of yours, shut it down for me right now." Chen Yan had always been traumatized by what happened back then. Now, seeing that shopkeeper Liu, his face turned pale with shock, his lips pressed into a thin line. He wanted to say something, but couldn't get the words out. I stepped forward, blocking him with my body. "Shopkeeper Liu, you should speak with some conscience. Yansheng's craft was figured out bit by bit on his own, and this shop is a legitimate business. How is that stealing business?" "Oh my, the lady boss sure has a sharp tongue." Shopkeeper Liu sneered sarcastically. "A mute and a tofu seller, scraping by together isn't easy. I suggest you know your place. Or don't blame me for being rude." I was so angry I laughed instead, glancing around at the neighbors who had gathered, my voice turning cold. "What, you want to poison me, mute too?" Chen Yansheng suddenly grabbed my wrist. "Down. I gripped his hand back, turned my head and said softly, "Yansheng, we can't keep hiding anymore. Back then, we were weak, and when we suffered losses we could only swallow it down, but now, it is different. He was clearly in the wrong first. Why should we be afraid? Let's go report to the authorities and explain everything that happened back then, every detail." Chen Yansheng looked at me, his chest heaving. The initial unease in his eyes was gradually replaced by determination. "We really did go to the county yamen to file a complaint." Chen Yansheng spoke slowly, so I spoke for him. "There were witnesses to the poisoning, and Chen Yansheng had even copied down the ledger of shopkeeper Liu's corner cutting on the official ships. Shopkeeper Liu couldn't deny it in the end, compensated us a large sum of silver, and was thrown in prison. At night, Chen Yansheng held me tightly, his voice muffled. "As a husband, I am not as brave as my wife. How shameful." I pressed against his chest, listening to that steady heartbeat, and said softly, "Being husband and wife means protecting each other. We support each other, and from now on, no one will dare bully us again." Ever since Zhou Shui came to Lucy Town, he felt business was good here, so he moved his blacksmith shop across from Dosheng's, wanting to make something of himself and slap me in the face. But after just swinging the hammer twice, his back injury flared up, and the blacksmith shop was completely abandoned. I heard from the workers in the shop that he often went without meals, living quite miserably. Chen Yansheng was soft-hearted. I had the shop assistant wrap up a few pieces of dried tofu that would keep well and a small bag of rice, along with a string of coins, and asked someone to deliver them to him without leaving a message. I didn't expect that he would think I'd gone soft and changed my mind, dragging his sick body to find me again. He knelt at the entrance of Daoshengji, tears and snot streaming down his face. He said he regretted it so much his guts were twisted, crying and begging me to give him another chance. I stood on the steps, looking at his disheveled and pathetic appearance, and felt nothing but calm inside. "Joe Shoei, it is too late." My voice wasn't loud, but it was clear. Back then, I genuinely wanted to build a good life with you. Even when you hurt your back, I never thought of abandoning you. It was you who didn't know how to cherish what you had. You thought I, Dunyang, couldn't survive without a man. Now you should understand. It is you who can't survive without a woman. It is not that women need you. It is that you need a woman to support you, serve you, and still stroke your ego. I placed that string of coins on the ground in front of him. Take this money and go back to Qinghe town. The cost of living is lower there, and the foundation of the blacksmith shop your father left behind is still there. Fix it up, do some work you are capable of, and you'll at least be able to get by. Live your life well, and don't come looking for me again. Zhou Shui held that string of coins, looked at my resolute eyes, then looked behind me into the shop, where Chen Yan was quietly watching this way, and finally burst into loud sobs. I believe this time he truly and genuinely regretted it. But this regret no longer holds any meaning for me. The day we drove Zhou Shoye away, Chen Yan was unusually quiet. While tidying up the shop, he kept sneaking glances at me, looking like he wanted to say something but couldn't. At night when we lay down, he tossed and turned, unable to sleep. In the end, he gently hugged me from behind, buried his face in the back of my neck, his voice muffled. "Wife, will you also not want me anymore?" I turned around and touched his face in the dim light. "What nonsense are you thinking, you fool? Of course not." But he regretted it. His voice was a bit anxious, with a barely noticeable tremble and grievance. "You two were together for 5 years, but we haven't even been together for a year. How can feelings be measured by time?" I sighed and looked seriously into his eyes. "Chen Yansheng, listen carefully. Whether he regrets it or not is his business. What I want is you, the one who cares about my well-being and lives a steady life with me now. As long as you don't change, I won't leave. Understand?" He nodded, but his eyes still looked dim, as if hiding unease. Suddenly, he leaned close to my ear, his warm breath brushing over. "Then, let's have a child." "Okay." I was stunned. Why bring this up all of a sudden? His voice was low, confident yet a bit shy. "Once we have a child, you'll have something to hold on to. From then on, even if you have other thoughts, you'll think twice about it. For the child's sake, you won't abandon me." He paused, then added very seriously, "Consider it collateral." I couldn't help but laugh out loud, gently poking his forehead. "Who taught you that? You've gotten so scheming." But he didn't laugh, just looked at me with wet eyes, like a big dog afraid of being abandoned. My heart softened, and I leaned in to kiss him. All right, whatever you say. But remember, I won't abandon you, and it is never because of a child. It is because my husband is already wonderful." His eyes suddenly lit up. He nodded vigorously, then held me tight. "Wife, let's start making a baby right now. Wife, I heard we need to do it several times to succeed. Wife, is this position good? Wife." The red bed curtains hung softly, candlelight flickering. Outside the window, Wuxia town sank into peaceful slumber. But the night that belonged to us had only just begun. Can we just appreciate how Donyang turned her bean smell into the smell purely of money and success? This story hits home because it shows that a woman's value isn't defined by a man's approval. Zhou Shouyi treated her like free labor, but Chen Yansheng treated her like a treasure. It brings up a great point. The right partner will love the things the wrong partner complained about. She didn't need to change, she just needed to change husbands. I need to hear your thoughts in the comments. The split. Was she right to take half the money without a formal divorce? Or was that too bold? I say, take every penny, girl, the ex. Do you think Zhou Shoye actually regretted losing her? Or did he just regret losing his free maid and ATM? The new hubby, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do we love a man of action, like Chen Yansheng? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a juicy story time. Stay fabulous, ladies.